Welcome to turning your winter blues into winter greens. Whether you've never grown food before or you only grow herbs but not in winter, this is the place to be. Hi, my name's Christy Ross and I'm the founder of Planted Places. Planted Places, what we do is teach people how to grow organic leafy greens and herbs in living soil. And that is the key. We use living soil because that's really how you get the most nutrition, best tasting produce. Maintaining your healthy nutrition through the cold, dark days of winter can be really challenging. And this is the time when you need it most. When the flu season is up, now with COVID, more than ever, we need our immune system strong. If you are growing food in a raised bed during the summer times, now is when you're basically closing up shop and not thinking about growing food until spring. But what I want to do today is I want to show you how it is possible to do this even in winter. I'm going to show you through container gardening and through our wall structures that we have, how easy it is to do that. I'm going to show you what you can be growing in the cold winter months, how you need to do that, and how you need to protect those seedlings during their growth stages. And then, most fun of all, we're going to show you some recipes that you can be making with the food you're growing now in the winter to keep your health at optimal levels. In Planted Places, we were focused on helping people with ornamental living walls. And I had a customer that wanted to grow food on a wall. And I thought, oh my God, that is the best thing ever. Of course, that combines the beauty of a living wall with all the health and nutrition that comes from growing your own food. But I didn't know how to do that. And so I went ahead and we did it and we failed miserably. And so what I realized is this is embarrassing. I am a gardener. I have a living wall business, but yet I don't know how to grow food. And I realized it's very different. And it is about the soil, and it is about understanding seedling health and organic fertilizers and all of those things. And so what I did is I partnered up with different professionals and experts in the industry to learn about living soil, learn about what that is, and to learn about how do you grow food successfully in soil, because that is where you get the optimal health. And now what I've done is I've decided I want to bring this to everybody. And so this is our first series in winter that we're doing to really focus on this, to make sure people can be successful even in the winter, because it is a shame when you are growing all spring, summer into fall, and then you have to stop because the days get shorter and the colder temperatures. And oftentimes that's just because people don't know the tools and techniques to follow. So that's what we're going to do today. So what I want to do is I want to walk you through the different leafy greens and herbs that are really great for the cool season. And what that means is that these plants can really thrive in cold temperatures. In fact, they prefer the cooler temperatures. So when I say cooler temperatures, I'm talking primarily, what most people would consider kind of a mild winter environment. So daytime temperatures 40s, night times going into maybe the high 30s. And that temperature is really optimized. Growing food is optimized really for California and the southern states here in the U.S. But what we're going to do, especially in the second series, is I'm going to talk about what you can do when you live in an environment where you do have snow. And come October, the snow comes or the frost starts. And so we're going to talk about that. But let's first, in this series, let's go through the different plants that you can be growing that can handle the cooler temperatures. And even if you are growing indoors with grow lights, which we'll talk about in the next video, you still want to be picking the plants and the seedlings that thrive in cooler temperatures, because regardless if it's inside, chances are you have it near a window with a grow light and you're still getting that cool breeze kind of coming through the window and such, in the windowsill. So that's important. So let's talk, I always think that it's important to first look at gardening's about patience. And it is about creating really healthy habits around how you take care of your garden. And it doesn't have to take a long time, especially when you're gardening with container plants and on our planted wall structures, which I'll show you in a little bit. And the reason for that is because it's a contained environment where you can contain the soil. You can really keep that soil maintained well as you can really control where you move things. And so that's what I'm going to be showing you, and that's really where Planted Places focuses. And the important thing for that is that really is urban farming. You can do this anywhere. Whether you have a very large yard but not optimal sunlight in the right spaces to grow your raised bed, or you live in a condo or a townhome and you don't have outdoor space, or maybe if you do, it's a very small space. So container gardening and growing on a planted wall, mobile wall structure allows you to do that, which is really great because that means everybody can benefit from this. So the first thing I want to talk about is when I said patience, oftentimes growing food, you do need patience. These are living things, and sometimes you get a rodent that eats it, and sometimes you're maybe not watching and you have pests that kind of take over the young seedling growth, all of that. All of these things happen. And we're here to coach you through it and tell you what to do and what you can do to minimize that. But it's important to know that that does happen. But there's some plants that take longer to grow and some that are a little faster. And so what we're going to do right now is I'm going to talk to you about some of the more faster growing ones and then some that take longer. And what we do is you weave that through in terms of when you're gardening and you're growing food so that you're constantly enjoying the fruits of your labor. So the first thing I want to talk about, which is so big nowadays, that is microgreens. I love microgreens. This is my new go-to food. And there's so many great things about microgreens. And one big, I could throw a lot of things at you, but I'm just going to give you a couple different stats every once in a while because I don't want to overwhelm. And the good thing is we do have a PDF download where you can download the nutrient components that we're talking about that are part of the different leafy greens and herbs. But with microgreens, what scientists have found in research is that in those microgreen sprouts, so let me show you, kind of lift this one up. This is I believe these are broccoli microgreens. In these, and this is growing in, this is about a week since planting. And that's what is really exciting about these is that when you're growing microgreens, usually you have to wait about a week and then you can start harvesting them. So in about 2 days, as long as this is kind of getting some nice sunlight, indoors or outdoors, you can do microgreens indoors or outdoors without grow lights, which is pretty exciting, as long as you have a direct light shining on it, and like a windowsill. And the nice thing about these is that these have equivalent of 40 times the nutrient that is in the mature plant. So if you think of a broccoli floret and you're eating broccoli, if you just get a handful of micro broccoli greens, you actually get 40x the level of nutrients in those microgreens than you are getting in that broccoli floret. So so the same thing can be said for micro carrot greens, micro radish greens, all of those. So, micro cabbage greens, micro kale greens. So if you think about the nutrients that are in that mature plant, when you're dealing with a microgreen, you're getting 40x the nutrition, which is amazing and sort of mind-blowing when you think about it. Another thing about it is they're really high in antioxidants, cancer fighting, and like nutrients inside of you. And so that's important too. So I always love to tell the story of when, if I'm at a trade show, and a lot of times I'll be at a trade show, not now with COVID, but when things open up again, and I always had the microgreens growing on the wall or in the containers, and I literally just eat those all day long to keep my energy going. And it's sort of like drinking coffee all day long. But I don't get the buzz feel. I just get that burst of energy, and it feels so great. And it's because there's so much nutrition going in. So that's your microgreens. So microgreens are absolutely something you can grow year round, and they're easy. And we have, if you're part of our Planted Box membership and Planted Wall, you actually, we send those to you monthly for you to be growing. So you're constantly harvesting and growing microgreens. But basically what you do with those is when you get those seeds, it could not be easier. You get your soil wet, not very deep, maybe an inch or two of soil, and you make sure that soil is nice and damp, not overly moist. Just you can, if you squeeze it, you don't want like 1 or 2 drops of water coming out, so you don't want it too saturated. And you get your seeds wet. You want them to be wet. So oftentimes best practice is to soak those overnight. You don't have to. I've certainly grown them without doing that. And in fact, what I do, I cheat, is I put the seeds in a cup of water, and then I slowly pour those seeds over the soil, and then I kind of spread it out with my hand. If there's certain microgreen seeds that have a thicker husk, you will need to definitely soak. overnight, or because you need to break down that cellular wall. That's the husk that covers that seed. But most radish, broccoli, kale, mustard seeds, most of those microgreen seeds are going to be okay if you just kind of get those wet and then put them on the soil. But the big point thing that you want to do with microgreens is you want to keep that covered. Usually put a wet paper towel over it, and then you keep it covered in the dark for probably about 2 days until it starts sprouting, and then you take it out and you put it in a bright lit area, and you make sure to mist it. You want to keep those wet. You don't want it overly damp, because that could cause mold potentially to form, because they're really packed in there. You just want to mist it to keep it a little damp. So that's microgreens. And those are a quick win, super nutritious all year long. You can be doing that. But the important thing about all of the plants that I'm going to show you right now are that all of these, especially because they're growing in living soil, are very high in vitamins and minerals that you need. And a lot of these in particular, and I'll point those out, are ones that are important for your immune boosting health. And so these are the plants that you want to be growing right now. So I'm going to start with 2 that I will say are probably the most important when it comes to immunity boosting, and just in terms of packing in the vitamins and the nutrients, the micronutrients that you need, and minerals. If you only can grow 1 or 2 of them, these are the ones you want to grow. So the first one I want to say is arugula. So this is an arugula that's been growing in a bit. I've been harvesting it, so you've got your new growth growing around the side here. But not only is arugula a wonderful tasting leafy green, especially when it's fresh, it tastes nothing like fresh arugula. When you get arugula and you buy it at the grocery store, it's lost so much of its taste, it doesn't even taste the same. It is amazing when you have it fresh. In fact, I'm going to read off some of them. So arugula has vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, vitamin K, iron, folate, potassium, magnesium, riboflavin, copper, zinc, just in arugula. And what is really important about that is zinc and vitamin C, as you probably know, are very, very important for boosting your immunity. Vitamin C is obviously known for preventing kind of respiratory infections and such. And so that is super important right now with COVID and everything that's going on in our world. So arugula is wonderful. And arugula, another thing about that is it's actually one of the faster growing leafy greens. And so some of these grow slower, but arugula tends to grow faster. Another one that's important is bok choy. Bok choy is a great leafy green that you grow in the winter. It likes the cooler temperatures. It's really hard to grow bok choy in the summer, especially if you're in an area where it's continually in the 80s and such. It likes cooler temps. And bok choy is another one of those like super high vitamins and nutrients. So bok choy has in it antioxidants are in there. Again, those are those cancer fighting ingredients that you want. Vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, vitamin K, iron, manganese, vitamin K, vitamin E, keeps going, B6, and magnesium. So bok choy is amazing. Now, before I started growing bok choy, and this is a new seedling, just so you know, this was planted a week ago, so this is small. In a little bit, I'm going to show you what they look like in the wall when they've been growing a while. But bok choy is another one of those leafy greens that does not taste like what it tastes when you get it at a farmer's market or if you get at the grocery store. It is it's very crisp taste, and it's a very almost kind of like a sweet taste. I put that in my salads. I take a leaf and I break it up, I put it in a salad. Obviously it's wonderful in a stir fry, and it's really good for like a noodle soup. If you're making like an udon soup and you add your bok choy leaves, it's really good as well. A lot of times you want to flash boil these, so you bring water to boil and then you just throw in the bok choy leaves and you just let it literally like 30 seconds and then you take it out. You don't want it to cook too long, because the nutrients are going to be leached out. But if you just do it real quick, boom, take it out, the nutrients are still there. Okay, so these are the 2. Like if you're going to only pick 2, those are good ones. Kale is a super important one as well. A lot of good nutrients in kale. In fact, here we go, vitamin A and vitamin K, folate, vitamin E, and vitamin B. So this is, everybody knows kale is great. And this is a, God, I forget the name of this kale, but I love the name. I think this is a Russian frills kale. And it's got these beautiful purple stems. And these can get very big. In the container, this is growing about a half a gallon of soil, but this is a unique soil blend we use. So this thing is happy. And there's all sorts of kales that you can grow, but these are good and they are cool tolerant. Mustard greens. This is something that was just planted. This is a kind of a new seedling that just went in. And these are really good anti-inflammatory for your system. Obviously vitamins and minerals, but known for anti-inflammatory. Now let's walk on down. I'm gonna go over to the planted wall and I'm gonna show you all the specific varieties that we're talking about. Okay, what I've got here in front of me is a view of the planted wall structure, so you can see just how much space it takes up. So when you are growing food in the winter, or actually year-round, you can do it in small spaces and you can actually grow a lot of food in a small space. So let's get started. Let me go up close because this wall in particular has all leafy greens and herbs that you should be growing in the winter. So all of these you can be growing and you should be growing. So the first one here is spinach. As you can see, this is a spinach plant, and spinach, everybody knows, is really, really healthy for you. I'm gonna have my cheat sheet in front of me and I'm gonna tell you what are some of the great ingredients in this. So nutrients that you need to know about: spinach, antioxidants, super high, vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, iron, folate. Okay, so here's another spinach that we've got. This one's growing in more, and this is a little baby one. This one just kind of got planted. We move the kale out of the way, and you can see the difference right there next to each other. Okay, another one, Mizuna, that you may not know about. Beautiful purple red leaves. It's also, you could do this in green leaves. There's different varieties. There's one that's called wasabi of Mizuna, and that one literally is a very, very spicy version of Mizuna. Mizuna is in the mustard family, and it is a little bit more on the spicy side. You know, it's kind of like arugula, and then Mizuna is a little more spicier than arugula is. And Mizuna is very good for you as well. We're looking at vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K, iron, and folate in this one as well. Very similar to the spinach, except for spinach is known for those antioxidants. The other thing with, that's good. Okay, kale. Here's the kale that's getting big and crowding out everybody. So this is kale. Here's another kale, and this is just amazing to see how much it's growing. They're beautiful. And kale really likes, obviously, the cooler temperatures, just like Mizuna, by the way, is important because Mizuna is a fast-growing plant in the cool season. What you will find in general is a lot of these plants, spinach is probably an example, where they just grow slower when it's colder. They can handle the temperatures, but they grow slower because of the cooler temperatures and the shorter days. Mizuna, though, is one which will tend to grow a little faster. Another one that's good is Swiss chard. There's our Swiss chard right there. And Swiss chard does very well in the, actually year-round, but it can handle the cooler temperatures as well. And Swiss chard is known for vitamin C, vitamin K, manganese, vitamin E, and beta-carotene, as well as zinc. Okay, that's important because remember, zinc is actually really good at boosting your immunity. So that is one. If you guys remember, both Swiss chard and arugula have zinc in them. So if you're feeling like you need to get your immunity a little boost, Swiss chard and arugula, you want to be putting those in. There's our Bok Choy. Okay, I wanted to show you the Bok Choy because look at how big the Bok Choy gets. Okay, and this is actually in a, let me get that arugula leaf out of the way. And this has been harvested multiple times. And if you can see back in there, you know, there's been harvesting, but one leaf, like let's just look at this leaf. Look at, this is the size of my hand, and this is the leaf. So what's really great about Bok Choy is that you can get almost like multiple leaves out of just one of them. Okay, let's move on. Chives. Chives is another thing that can cool temperatures does kind of stunt it, grow it a little slower, but it will last. Especially a little bit more mild winter environments, or having the right environment in terms of protection, which we'll talk about in the next workshop. But chives has a lot of great stuff in it. Chives is vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, iron, vitamin K, phosphorus, sulfur, and a lot of phytonutrients, which are actually good for your digestive, building up your digestive system. So there we go. It's kind of like garlic's the same way. So there you go. There's your chives growing. I've got a lot of chives growing. And let's see what else is here. I've got another Mizuna there, and then we've got oregano. Oregano it doesn't grow as fast in the winter, but it pretty much can last through the winter. But it doesn't grow as fast, but it won't completely die out. Mint is one of those herbs that it really does like the summer heat, and so I would not recommend growing mint in the winter. Okay, I think that actually shows you a lot of what I wanted to show you today. Here you can see the same leafy greens growing in container pots, and you can see they're both very happy here as well. These are a little bit younger plants. The ones in the wall were a little bit more mature, but you can see that these are thriving as well, and really a lot of that really has to do with the soil they are growing in and the environment that they are surrounded in. So that is what we're going to be talking about in the next workshop. There's also some other fun things that you can do to kind of get started, and also just kind of fun projects. So these ones in particular, I'm going to talk specifically about garlic and potatoes. These take longer, and that's kind of that nice balance when you're growing food, where there's some things like microgreens that you can start eating within a week. Your leafy greens tend to be more around anywhere from like 3 to 6 weeks before you can start eating those, and it totally depends on the environment, how much sun or grow light exposure it's getting, different things like that. And then you have things like potatoes and garlic, where they're growing, kind of through the winter months, and then come early spring, you're going to be able to start harvesting. So let's talk about garlic. Garlic is, here's a garlic clove here with lots of bulbs in it. And it's important, if you're going to grow garlic, that you don't just go to the grocery store and buy the bulb that you have, that you see at the grocery store, because oftentimes they might be coated in special preservatives or something to kind of keep its shelf life longer. You want to make sure that you are getting a good organic garlic clove. And truly what you do is you plant it in the soil, like in one of these containers, 2 inches deep, and you're just gonna take you're gonna keep the husk on, and you're just gonna place that into the soil about 2 inches deep. And then you're going to, it's kind of the timing on that is important. You want to plant it usually late fall, so kind of right about now. If you're living in kind of more of a mild to moderate, you kind of want to do it before the frost hits. And if you're in the southern states, Arizona, Florida, you could probably do this pretty much anytime between early fall through spring. You could be planting your garlic. But what you'll want to do is you don't want to do it too soon, where it's getting too much sun, it starts kind of shooting out greens, because you want the roots to get established, because throughout the winter you want those roots to get established and be growing and basically be building out the garlic bulb that's going to be there. And then come spring you can harvest those. Potatoes are another thing. Typically with potatoes, you can do those year round. Typically you want to get them in before the frost hits, but if you're doing, beautiful thing about container gardening, if you're doing it in container gardening, you can do it pretty much any time. And the big thing with potatoes is you bury them deep. And you do not, same thing with the garlic, you do not buy those from the grocery store. You want to make sure that you're getting organic tubers, and you're using those. And then those, what will happen when you plant those into the soil, deep into the soil, deeper than 2 inches, usually you want to be about 6 inches, at least 6 inches down, because they're going to start sprouting out eyes. The tuber will just start and it will just start multiplying. And so what you want to do is you kind of want to watch that pot that you put it in, because as they start growing, you don't want that potato to actually break into the surface of the soil, because once it does and it starts greening a little bit, that potato becomes poisonous. So you want to keep that buried, and if you see it starting to bulge up, you want to add more soil on top of that pot. But basically, you know, as you get into early spring, it's going to grow. It usually takes about, I want to say about 3 months, 4 months for the potatoes to grow, and then by early spring, you are going to dig out your soil and you're going to see a lot of potatoes. So those are fun things. Another fun thing that is a good winter month thing is mushrooms. So these are some shiitake mushrooms. The best mushrooms, easiest mushrooms to grow are oyster mushrooms. And mushrooms are unique because they don't really grow in soil. I mean, basically with mushrooms, oftentimes you want to get a mushroom kit. And we actually are going to be providing those to our planted members because we're getting a lot of interest in growing mushrooms. And so, and I think that would be so much fun. So we're going to be doing that. But basically with mushrooms is you have a substrate, and then you're putting the kind of mushroom spores on that. And then there's an incubation period. And then once you pass that incubation period, then you bring it out. And you mist constantly while it's growing, while the spores are growing into mushrooms. And I kind of just made that really brief for you. I don't want to go into too much detail. In fact, I'll have to do a whole series on mushrooms once we start making those available to people. On our membership, we'll have a series on that because it will be fun to talk about that because they're different and you know, they're amazing in recipes. So one of the things that people will say is, I don't think I have the right space to grow food. I really want to do it, but I really don't think I have the right space. And that's really the beauty of one of the things I'm hoping I have showed you here today, is that container gardening and growing on a mobile wall structure really gives you a lot of mobility and flexibility in how you grow. And so that really is a great lead in for our next workshop, because in the next workshop, I'm going to walk you through what you can do in the winter months to really protect your seedlings. So whether you're growing in a mild winter location or moderate or even extreme, there's things you can do to protect your seedlings. Like I said, you want to grow with the season, so you want to grow those types of plants that are going to thrive in the cooler months. But you know, there's only so much you can take if you're covered in snow. So we're gonna talk about that, and I'm also gonna talk to you about soil and the importance of that, because that really is the magic in all of this, is that if you have the right living soil and the right organic materials in your soil that's really feeding those plants, that's how you have the healthiest food possible. So that next time we're talking about winterizing and what you can do, and then the third and final workshop, we're going to talk to you about what you can do with this food you're growing to really be putting that into your food, your recipes and your meals, and the types of teas that you can be making to boost your immunity during this time of year. So that is exciting, and I'm looking forward to doing this more with you guys. So definitely leave a comment. Let me know what your questions are, any comments that you have, anything you want me to drill into more detail on. And I can definitely cover that in the next workshop if you guys get to me in the next few days before the next workshop is released. And we're releasing them every 2 days. Also, on the page where you see this video, if you scroll down, you'll see a PDF download, and definitely download that, because that highlights some of the important products, some of the important leafy greens and herbs I talked about today, and it highlights the different nutrients that are in them, so you can have that, and kind of different ways to use those in recipes. So that's a helpful item for you. Okay, and then last but not least, so important for you guys